The plant list has been built. We've gone through the plant database at Natural Capital and got our plant list, food list. We've got different lists for animal forage, insectary plants, nitrogen fixers, windbreak. Plants that go up to a pH of 8.2 or a pH of 8, and we have some areas with a really high pH that we want to look at, so we're looking at special plants for those areas. Those may or may not be part of our regular plant list because those are exceptional spaces, but the rest of these here are for out of the main plant list for food and animal forage. These are functions that we're getting and we want to place on it. At this point we're going to pick out our plants. This is what I call the pick. So we've added a column on the left here, and we're just going to go down this column and really just pick out the plants that we know. So the first thing you want to do is pick out the plants that you know and are familiar with first, then go back and look at plants that have some kind of function or use for us. So as you can see here in the plant type, it's not organized yet, and I like to keep that organized. So we're going to go up to sort, and we're going to sort that by first by plant type, then by scientific name. Here we go. Oh, these got a little bit out of whack, so we'll get those ordered out some more. Here we go. So these are all our annuals at the top, of course. Deciduous shrubs and deciduous trees. We got like 400 and some plants here that we can choose from, and we organize this a little bit. Alright, so now the annuals, I don't really get into picking out a lot of those because that's for the garden space mostly. There are some reseeding plants in here like burdock and things like that. Aquatic plants, of course, those are things we're going to want for the pond, and so I'm going to put an X in all of those because I really want to take a look at that. Biennial plants, of course, burdock, there's enough of that flying around. Rapeseed for canola, if you're interested in growing that. I'm not going to check it at this time. We have sweet clover, but that really, sweet clover and mullein, that just shows up. So if we want that, we can find the seeds and we can put that in, but we really don't need sweet clover added at this point, or mullein, because those are just natural plants. But once we get down to the shrubs here, now we're looking at some plants that we really want to maybe have in our space. So the serviceberries, of course, kind of reminding us all the different kinds that we have that we can work with. Lead plant, of course, for a nitrogen fixer. Pea shrub. Button bush is great. Senna is a nitrogen fixer. There, our cornelian dogwood. Look at all these already. Not going to get into the filberts, although we could as far as a nut. We can check on that later. I'm not that familiar with this contorted filbert one. Russian olive, those are coming by. Silverberry might be fun to gummies. Try and look for some of those. Autumn olive, I've seen some really great jams coming out of olives now. I think they're calling them autumn berry or sweet berry. Euonymus are great. We're just going to bypass some of those. Forsythia, sea berries, of course. Now the sea berries, self-pollinating sea berries. I've done the male and female thing with sea berries before with not a lot of good production. Really hard to keep the males alive, I found, and the females just took over by the way they spread. So maybe something self-pollinating on that end. St. John's wort, clover, pivot, honeysuckles. Now the honeysuckle that I'm going to look at is the honeyberry, which is a honeysuckle, and that's a early season one. I don't see that on here, and I'm going to have to check that out because that is one of my honeyberry. It fruits in May, late May, so it's really a great plant in here. Let's see, going through some of these, chokecherry. Not really interested in that too much. Russian olive, fragrant sumac. Low growth sumac is actually a really nice plant to have as a ground cover, especially around the house and other areas. Daffodils and spring ephemerals will grow through it in the spring, and then it'll close up with the low growth sumac. So a really nice cover plant. Roses, probably look at a few roses going in here. Just click a few of those. You can see we got a lot of those. I really like Rugosa Rose, Carolina Rose, Prairie Rose is good too. On these boysenberry, all right, we've got a couple berries happening here. I know we're going to look at basket willow, and I think we had some black willow in here previously. Black elderberry, a bunch of cultivars of elderberry I know are available for that. Silver buffalo berry, nice nitrogen fixer. Spanish broom, kind of a good plant, and in some places is kind of invasive. So, you know what? I'm going to put a Y on that, because why do I want that? I don't know. We're going to have to see how that might work. Okay. White snowberry, great plant for animal foraging. Wolfberry, staying away from the lilacs. There's enough of those out there, but if we can have blueberries, look at all of those that we can play with. Amber maples, flame maple. Oh, look at all the maple trees. Not really looking at any maple trees at this point in there. Alder would be good. Paper birch. And look at that. Badger nut chestnut. Badger set. Chestnut, great. American yellowwood. Looking good on here. Okay. Now, I do like white ash as a fast-growing tree that we can basically has a really nice wood on there. And I don't see, and then the green ash also. Some of the now we have ash borers where I'm from, so be careful of that. But I think in this area, isolated, shouldn't be a problem down there. Black walnut, English walnut. Kind of look at those. Sure. Look at that. Honeycrisp apple zest star. So, by the way, when we're looking at these apples, these are semi-dwarf apple trees. These are grafted apple trees. So when we look at Honeycrisp or Zest Star, what we're basically doing is putting a placeholder for other plants. So there might be a lot of different cultivars available, but we will just use these to hold the place. They're 14 feet tall, 10 feet wide. Pretty much they can basically be a placeholder for any semi-dwarf apple that we might look at. Hybrid poplar. Oops. We do want to have that, and that is for windbreaks, fast-growing tree, nurse plant for us, quaking aspen. Same thing with that. Look at this, apricot. Let's play with these apricots, see what's available with those. Sweet cherries, for sure. I'm going to just slide this down a little bit so we can see a few more as we're going along here. Sour cherry, Montmorency, Meteor, North Star, black cherry. So again, there's Bali cherry, North Star cherry, Meteor cherry, different cherries that we can choose from. So let's just put those also as placeholders, knowing that we're going to look at cherry trees here. Common chokecherry, good for the animals, good for the birds. Have in there. Probably not going to have any oaks in there, but you know what? It'd really be nice long-term to plant some oaks as a really long-term overstory in some areas, especially along the creek on this property. So I'm going to mark that as an X. And now you can see here's the black willow here. A lot of willows that we can work with along the stream bed to hold the soil. Also, that's a really good food for goats and other animals as a forage crop. Lots of willows to look at here. Prairie Cascade is kind of interesting because we are in the prairie out there in Nebraska. Passing by these lilacs again. Now we do have the Linden, which is really, let's see, Telia. Well, let's see here. American Linden. They're like the basswood trees, which basswoods coppice really well. So a boulevard linden, American linden, pyramidal, red. You can see they're pretty tall and fairly wide. It would be interesting to see how they coppice, and they might also be a good forage tree for the animals. Staying away from the elm trees right now. Prickly ash is good if you want to have some medicinal uses. Other than that, it's not something I would plant, and pretty much trying to get rid of it. Really spreads fast. But the inner bark is a great medicinal that some people would like. Wintergreen. Got to have some of that color as we're going here. Another evergreen junipers are really nice windbreak wise. Very drought tolerant. Lots of junipers in here. Hughes, Lango, Mother Lode, Weber juniper. Look at all these Calvary wet junipers, evergreen shrubs. And look at the width on these and the height and the width. Over here we have this is the height and this is the width of these in feet. So pretty interesting sizes on these. These are really tiny plants, or broad. So we're on page 2 or line 240. I'm just go up to the top here. Make sure we're cool on all that. Yeah. And reformat this so they're all centered up for us. Good. But those junipers are looking pretty tiny on there. So I'm going to pass on those, but we want to keep in mind, let's just make a note in here as to why we might want to have junipers and look at this juniper, since we do have quite a bit in there. And then we have the pine trees, broom pine, Scotch pine, Canada yews. The yews have a tendency to get wind-burned, sun-scalded in the wintertime, but lots of spruce, lots of pine in here for windbreaks, but we have a windbreak list over at the bottom here, so we're not going to pull those plants out. Maybe we'll do that later and see. Here we go, Swiss stone pine. Going to want those. Right, Australian pine. And I didn't see the Korean nut pine in here. I wonder if that might be somewhere, might be usable. So when we Swiss stone pine, when we start looking at those, we're going to really look at the Korean nut pine. There's already a lot of pine on this property, so I'm not going to click on any more of these. Now we're into the grasses. If we can have ferns, let's have ferns. Winter bent grass, creeping bent grass, big blue stem. There we go. Whoa, some kind of a bamboo. Interesting to look at. Let's definitely mark that. Side oats grama, some really good grasses in here. Bottle rush. Now these are going to be down towards the river because they're probably looking for more of a wetter soils. As you can see, bog sedges as we go in through here. Bottle brush. Here, Elijah blue fescue, of course. Purple love grass, very nice. Blue oat grass. Hard fescue. So get some good grasses for ground cover. Switchgrass. Gotta have that. Sweetgrass. Speaking of Native American lands, let's get our sweetgrass in there also. Timothy, common reed grasses, all these things in here. Now we're down to the perennials. Lots of perennials to choose from. So basically what we're doing is we're going down here and finding all the plants. You know, we're going to want to have plants for the bees and plants for the organisms and the beetles and the soils, right? So anise hyssop and yarrow. You know what? Shallots, Egyptian onion, of course. Let's get that going in there too. Wormwood. Sweet wormwood is a really great plant to put in. Milkweeds, if we can have them. This goes in. Asparagus, of course. Asters, New England aster. Red stem asters. Any asters that we can have in for fall color and fall pollination or pollen for the bees. Really great. White wild indigo, cream wild indigo. I think there is also a blue wild indigo, but I don't see it in here right now. Baptisia Australis. We have alba and Bacteria Tiatia. As indigo, these are nitrogen fixers. Want to have those? They'll be down in our nitrogen fixing list too. Bachelor button, great plant to come back. Looks very similar to some other grain plants that we grow. Chamomile, chicory, got to have that. Sand coreopsis, and then we're into the clovers, and we're going to have all the clovers we can get for diversity in that area. Horsetail, we're going to stay away from that. There's a couple different things called horsetail, and I think this is equisetum. Very invasive out in the northwest, so tending to stay away from that. But we can have a little alpine strawberry, regular strawberries for sure, prairie smoke, wild licorice, Sunflowers, drew some artichoke, why not? Daylilies, got enough of those. Asters, can never have enough of that. Hyssop. Dead nettles, and you know what I didn't see in here was stinging nettles, but maybe they're coming along. If not, we're going to find nettles in here somewhere. Blazing star, great plants. Fall Solomon seal, down in the shade. In that loamy soil along the creek, perhaps we can get that going with the ferns that we saw earlier. Pennyroyal, spearmint would be good, not pennyroyal. It has some really unfortunate effects in people using it as a medicinal. Don't really like to put pennyroyal in anywhere. Chinese peony. Let's see what else here. And I go through, you know, some of these might be familiar to you. Some of them are not familiar to me. French sorrel, like that. Curly dock, sage. Right, salvia. River bulrush, if we can get that in. Be great. Some river grasses. Along the head, hens and chicks. You know, along the house and areas as a ground cover. Really nice plant to have. So we're not just thinking about in the orchard, but also around the house, around the foundation plantings, entry garden, along the driveway, things like that. Right, here we go, hedge nettle. Didn't see a regular nettle yet, though. We have enough dandelions coming through. Get some thyme, mother of thyme. That was also creeping thyme. Here we go, stinging nettles. Got to have our nettles. Look at that. There's some nice yucca. Hog peanut, ground nut. Got to have that. Clematis, if we have some nice vines. Of course, it's very much for ornamental and for insects, not so much for eating, but they are beautiful plants to have along the house and along fencing. Chinese yams, going to put a Y on that. Haven't used that before, but I think that would be great. English ivy, I think we'll pass. Hops, if you know how to grow it, right? If you really know how to grow it and how to use it, it's really fun to go grow and great for teas. So we're kind of look at these different hops that we have available. There's another honeysuckle, woodbine ivy, Virginia, Engelmann. Riverbank grapes. You know, if we can do Riverbank and Frontenac grapes, that would be great. Frontenac grape was actually developed by Elmer Swenson in Osceola, Wisconsin, through the University of Minnesota. A lot of great grape rootstock came from Osceola, Wisconsin, and has really saved a lot of the grape industries. Okay, so we have all these marked all the way to the bottom. I'm going to save this file because that's a lot of work to just sit there and not have saved. We're going to head back to the top of the file. Right? Here we are at the top again. And that is a point where we're going to collect everything. Right? And we're going to sort. And again, we're going to sort, but we're going to add pick at the top, then plant type, then scientific name. And what's going to happen is all the plants that we picked are going to be at the top of our list now. And we go to print, we're going to have 100 and that's a lot, 142 plants. And our next step is going to be to print these plants out so we can do some planning with what we want to do. So we'll go back up here down to File and set our print area so we can print all those plants out to look at them. So that's the last picking session that we do on this. The next one we'll want to do is go into the food and look at some of those. Animal forage, anything specific that we didn't pick in the other ones, because these are things to learn about, especially when we start getting into nitrogen fixers. If we're building our windbreaks, we're going to want to have to put that in. We also have some other plants that we added in from windbreaks from the Nebraska area. That's where this site is. So we added their plants in here also. So that's how we pick our plants and how we get them at the top. Just reorder it with your pick first and then your plant type and scientific name, and you'll have a nice order of plants and you'll have all your plants at the top. And then print your list and we'll go on to the next step.